Hello, good citizens. My name is Dan, and welcome to Part 3 of the Victoria Crown Prosecutors Lies and Crime series. So, as you heard in Part 2, Mr. Pooh takes the stand and tells his bogus story about being assaulted. Along the way, Mr. Pooh is getting busted in his multiple lies. Now, just keep in mind that this video series isn't focusing directly on the assault trial, but what happened after the first day of trial. And at the end of the first day of trial, as you heard, near the end of Part 2, we spent about 10 minutes discussing how we're going to continue this trial. In the end, it was determined by Judge Carmen Rogers that we would show up the next day at 11 a.m., but only for a hearing to fix a continuation date. And again, this trial has been set as a 2-day trial for several months in advance, and not only does the prosecutor not have time for this trial on the 2 days it was scheduled for, neither does the judge. Here is that hearing.
Yes, Your Honor. Cheeseman, initial P, for the Crown. I've been to the JCM office this morning. They advise there's time available August for our next date.
All right. That suits you, Dan?
Your Honor, may I speak?
Yes.
I had this trial set for 2 days back in February,
Yes.
and then had a trial confirmation hearing in June.
Yes.
This court could not obligate that time yesterday.
Yes.
So I'm going to ask that you stay these charges.
All right. Well, Dan, you are entitled to make an application regarding a violation of Section 11 if you wish to do that, but I'm not going to hear that now. I'm in the middle of something else.
Okay, And
that. You need to give notice to the Crown. You need to obtain transcripts. You need to file materials, and there's a notice requirement. So I would suggest you talk to Mr. Cheeseman about that, because that's not something I'm going to entertain at this point. My plan is that on August, we will hear evidence. If something else should happen on that day, you need to, like I say, provide notice to the Crown, and you need to file materials. And I'd ask you to remain in contact with Mr. Cheeseman about that, otherwise I will expect everyone here and all witnesses to conclude this matter on of August.
I object. I do not consent, Your Honor. I would ask that this charge be dismissed.
Yes, Dan, then let me repeat myself. You are entitled to make an application to have the matter dismissed, but I'm not going to hear it now, and there are requirements if you wish to do that. You can obtain some legal advice, but you are required to provide notice to the Crown of such an application and materials. And you're certainly entitled to do that, but if that isn't done and there isn't an understanding that something else is going to happen on and I mean an understanding between yourself and Mr. Cheeseman, not something you decide should happen, but an agreement between you. Failing that, I expect both parties back here with the witnesses, and I will conclude the trial on that matter. All right?
I understand, Your Honor. I also ask that all the bail conditions be removed because...
Again, I'm not going to hear that application right now, Dan.
Okay.
We're going to continue the trial on August. And at that point you can make any other applications that you want. But if one of those applications is a delay application, then I doubt, if what you've said about the timing is correct, that we're going to have time on that date, and I would suggest you get notice to the Crown so appropriate time be set aside for that.
I'm just going to advise the court. So I'm going to be contacting the chief, the office of the chief judge regarding this, that this court couldn't fulfill their obligations to make time for the trial that was well set in advance. And there's no excuse. There's no reason for this to hold me hostage in a holding pattern yesterday for 5 hours for a 2-day trial that was set months in advance, and all I got was 2 hours. There's no excuse. There's no... I object, and I do not consent to this, Your Honor.
All right. Well, I can understand you being unhappy with that, Dan. It is indeed unfortunate when matters that are scheduled for trial can't proceed. Unfortunately, it does occur for all sorts of reasons, which I won't get into now, and you're entitled to contact whoever you wish to contact about that. All I can do is try to expedite the conclusion of this trial, which appears has been done because they've managed to accommodate a 1-day hearing, which I must say is much longer than the original trial was even set for on very short order, and we will proceed on that day.
Respectfully, I don't agree, Your Honor.
That's fine. August, 9:30. Do we have a courtroom?
No, I believe it would.
It'll be 9 o'clock.
It's be 9 o'clock in 104.
In 104, okay?
And then we get assigned to the courtroom.
Yeah, 9 o'clock. Courtroom 104, on that day.
Thank you, Your Honor, and then I'll just ask Dan to accompany me to the JCM office to get the scheduling sheet.
Yeah? Go with Mr. Cheeseman to the JCM office. Dan, you need to sign the sheet. Mr. Sheriff, perhaps if you could just accompany them.
I will.
To the JCM office?
I will.
Thank you.
So this trial has been set to continue in about 1 week's time. After this hearing concluded, I went home. When I got home, I realized that I now had 1 week to gather content in my defense on what Mr. Pooh had testified about. Specifically, I wanted to take a picture of the building he used to live in that shows the entrances and the garbage can on Uphill Avenue to show that Mr. Pooh's story was an all-out lie. I mean, what else can I do to prove I'm innocent, right? Now, leading up to this, I would not have been able to take pictures of Mr. Pooh's building as I have been on bail conditions for 8 months now. And one of those conditions states this, and I'm quoting it directly, quote, "You shall not attend any place which you know to be the residence, school, or workplace of Mr. Pooh," unquote. So when I was charged with assault and put on these bail conditions, I had no idea where Mr. Pooh lived. Well, that only lasted a week or two because within the same month that I was charged and put on bail conditions, the prosecutor, Katie Frances Dutton, or her assistant, S. Wilson, disclosed Mr. Pooh's full address to me, someone that they were portraying as an angry, violent offender. That's about as big as a mistake as a prosecutor can make. So at this point, I've known Mr. Pooh's address for 8 months now and want nothing to do with this little criminal liar loser, and I steer clear of his address. But, as you heard in part 2, Mr. Pooh makes it clear. He no longer lives there. He even makes a point of interrupting me in mid-question about when he left the area where he lives with, quote, "lived," unquote. He does this not only once, but twice, and continues to give answers like, quote, "where I lived at the time," unquote. You also heard Judge Carmen Rogers ask Mr. Pooh if he moved and is comfortable answering questions about where he lived at the time. Judge Carmen Rogers then instructs me to change my questions to, quote, "where you lived at the time," unquote. Unfortunately, as you heard in part 2, Judge Carmen Rogers continuously interferes in my questions about the direction and where Mr. Pooh started his walk that day. And it's my belief at that point in my trial, we have a mistrial. The judge has no authority to interject herself into my perfectly relevant questions and make me change my questions or explain to her, the prosecutor, and Mr. Pooh why I'm asking these questions. That's a nail in the coffin for anyone who presumed they had a right to remain silent. So, it's at this point in my trial, back in part 2, as it continues. What you're listening to is an illegal proceeding. But that's not what this video series is about. So let's get back on track here. So now that I don't know where Mr. Pooh lives, I can go to the building that he lived at the time and take a panorama picture of the property where he lived at the time to show that he lied about the garbage can on Uphill Avenue. As I'm doing this, a woman in a minivan pulls out of the underground parking and pulls right beside me as I'm taking pictures and asks, "Can I help you?" with a condescending attitude. I ignored her and walked to another position to continue taking pictures. Within 3 hours of me taking the pictures, the police knock on my door and ask me if I was taking pictures there. I confirmed. I didn't think it was a big deal. Then they told me I was under arrest for breaching my bail conditions. They said I went to Mr. Pooh's residence to take pictures of his wife and kids. I also showed my bail conditions to the police and explained why I was there and that I could not have been breaching my bail conditions. They said I could explain it to a judge. After spending an afternoon and overnight in the Victoria Police Department's jail cell, I was transported to the Victoria Law Courts, where I was held all day in a cell in leg shackles. I spoke with duty counsel and explained that this was a huge misunderstanding, and they were relying on false information that can be confirmed by the court's transcripts from the previous 2 days leading up to this. I also made it clear that if I was not released today, that I would be taking serious legal action. And finally, at 4:28 p.m., after being in custody for over 26 hours, I was brought before a judge for a bail hearing. Here is that hearing.
Your Honor, Kirk Karaskuix, I am duty counsel and I have had the opportunity to meet with Dan. This is Dan before the court. I can tell Your Honor that based on my discussions with him, we would be making an application for judicial interim release. I have spoken with my friend and I think she can address the situation as follows.
Well, Your Honor, this would be an application to revoke bail on and seek to detain Dan on.
Okay, and I'm just looking at the time with respect to the availability. The court time today is gone. And I understand, Dan, that there's a lot of information I think that needs to be considered by a court with your matter, so we are going to have to put it to another day to allow that time to be available to you, okay? So we can put it over to
I'm going to suggest Monday.
Monday.
Your Honor, and I'm going to suggest Monday at 9 a.m. in courtroom 104.
Okay.
Because if there is a place available,
It'll be found.
for Dan's benefit,
Yes.
it will happen sooner rather than in the afternoon on a
Okay.
busy weekend.
Okay.
Your Honor, I've already been in custody for 26 hours.
Yes. Okay, I understand that and there's nothing I can do about that right now. What we are going to do, Dan, is put it on the list first thing in the morning on Monday so that you will be assured to be heard on Monday and it won't be a situation where it's put in the afternoon necessarily without time being specifically allotted for you.
May I speak?
Yes.
This is all a huge misunderstanding. They're totally going on false information. I'm going to lose my job. I was absent from my job today without communication, and I work tomorrow and Sunday and Monday, and I'm going to lose my job because this matter was brought forward on false information.
Well, I can only go based on charges that are laid. I think you're aware of that.
I'm aware.
And we have to proceed with the hearing, and we are simply not able to do it today. So unfortunately, we are going to have to put you over to Monday, and we'll put it over to Monday 9 a.m. in courtroom 104. And that's assignment court, so that it can be assigned to a specific court, to allow the matter to proceed on Monday without any delay.
That's a bail hearing?
As a bail hearing, yes.
And Your Honor,
Yes.
for Dan's benefit, I will not be duty counsel next week, but I will be here Monday and I will make sure to speak with the in-custody duty counsel to apprise him of the situation,
Thank you.
so that he'll have the benefit of their assistance.
And it's an in-person appearance.
In-person appearance, so you will come back to be here, okay?
Yeah. When would I be able to make phone calls?
You'll have to speak to Mr. Sheriff about that, okay? I don't have any control over the phones. Okay? Thank you.
Wow, some bail hearing, hey? So this was on a Friday, and yeah, even though I've been in the court's jail cells all day in leg shackles and have been in custody for over 26 hours, we don't have time for a bail hearing today. So for my benefit, instead of having it on a busy weekend, let's hold you in prison all weekend. Then you can have a bail hearing here, first thing in the morning on Monday, for my benefit. Also notice how neither duty counsel or the prosecutor, Melissa R. Murray, even said anything to the judge about why I was there. But Judge Jennifer Barrett knew that my case has a lot of information that needs to be heard. So even though Judge Jennifer Barrett never heard any allegations as to why I'm there, Judge Jennifer Barrett solely decided to hold me in prison over the weekend for my benefit on no information or allegations brought before the court. You think that's bad? That's nothing. Wait till you hear my bail hearing the following Monday. It's coming up next in part 4. This concludes part 3. Thanks for watching.